Building's not easy. It took a lot of hard work, a bunch of very smart teammates. It was very similar. It's not easy. It's really hard.
A mechanic from Leicester walked into a Miami auction lot, looked at a wrecked Bugatti that a billion-dollar manufacturer had declared impossible to fix, and said he'd take it. What followed exposed something the most exclusive car brands in the world had spent decades hoping nobody would find, and it triggered a bidding war between Amazon and Netflix that neither company had planned for when the year began. Matt Armstrong grew up in his father Tony's garage, learning through his hands rather than any classroom. That foundation shaped everything that came later, but for nearly a decade, Matt wasn't a mechanic at all. Mad Gear Pro sponsored him as a competitive BMX rider by his mid-teens, and by 2008 he was competing internationally at the BMX World Championships in Germany. During his qualifying run, he went up for a 720 tail whip, came down wrong, and dislocated his shoulder. He qualified in 16th place, but couldn't compete in the finals. The shoulder never properly healed, and a career built over 6 years ended in one moment. Matt was in his early 20s with no obvious next move. Back at the garage he went, delivering food at night, working days at Halford's, bartending when money ran short. A YouTube channel he had opened in April 2013 for BMX content sat largely unused until Hannah's Audi TT came back from an accident in pieces. Rather than write it off, Matt bought the salvage car from the insurer for £600, rebuilt it himself, and filmed every step. That one video did something none of his BMX content ever had, because people watched it all the way through, needing to know whether he'd pull it off. Matt noticed, and he never made a video any other way again. Hannah Smith, who later became a director of the companies behind the channel, was the operational backbone of everything Matt built. What he built grew fast. A Maserati rebuild crossed 1 million views, a Rolls-Royce crossed 2 million, and each project pulled in audiences who had never watched a car rebuild before, because the videos were never really about the cars. They were about whether the man in the garage was going to win. By October 2025, the channel sat at nearly 10 million subscribers, and then a phone call came from Miami. The Bugatti Chiron Pursport, sitting in a Copart auction lot, had started life as one of only 60 ever built, valued at somewhere between $4 and $6 million. Alex Gonzalez, known online as FXLXGoo, and the youngest person ever to own one at 25 years old, had been driving it when the accident happened. The front crumpled on impact, the airbags deployed, the carbon fiber bodywork cracked, and the repair estimate from Bugatti came in at $1.7 million. They wrote it off and sent it to auction. Alex bought it back for around $1.9 million and called Matt. Matt flew to Miami and said yes. The transmission had taken a hit that would have stopped most people cold. The front end needed a complete rebuild, and systems throughout the car had never been serviced outside Bugatti's own factory in Molsheim, France. And that's when Bugatti locked the VIN, using the full reach of its worldwide supply chain to shut the project down, citing safety concerns. What the manufacturer hadn't considered was that cutting off the parts supply didn't stop the rebuild. It forced Matt to open the car completely, and opening it completely meant pointing a camera at everything inside. The accelerator pedal was molded plastic. On a car marketed as the pinnacle of automotive engineering, the component directly connected to 1,500 horsepower was the kind of part found in a family saloon. Billet aluminum would have been lighter. Carbon fiber was available. A component worth a few pounds sat in a car worth $4 million, because nobody at Bugatti had expected anyone to look this closely. Then came the airbags. With official parts blocked, the team found that Audi A3 airbags at £50 each fitted the Chiron Pursport as though designed for it, because in a meaningful sense they had been. Bugatti had operated inside the Volkswagen Group since 1998, sharing the same engineering ecosystem as Audi, Seat, and Skoda. Component sharing across automotive groups is standard industry practice. Nobody puts it in the brochure for a $6 million hypercar. 10 million people watched the Audi airbag swap, and Mate Rimac, CEO of Bugatti Rimac, posted a response on Instagram addressing Matt directly. He acknowledged the gearbox damage, pointed to the structural stress on the carbon monocoque, and made clear that only a handful of facilities worldwide had the right equipment for a repair at this level. CEOs don't personally respond to YouTube channels unless something has genuinely rattled them, and Bugatti's communications team exists precisely for situations like this one. The biggest challenge came next. The crash had driven the engine forward hard enough to crack the cast aluminum engine mount support, and fixing it required splitting the car. The Chiron's modular design allows the front section and carbon monocoque to separate from the rear drivetrain, and Mate had publicly stated that only 2 facilities in the world could perform that split safely. Matt filmed the process and started anyway. The modular structure that looked so complex from the outside made the split more achievable than the CEO had suggested, and both halves came apart on camera in front of millions of people who weren't supposed to see it happen. A specialist named Bob, working at a place called the Machine Shop with no social media presence, 3D scanned the broken engine mount bracket, converted it to a CAD model, and machined a replacement from solid aluminum with no factory drawing to reference. 10 radiators followed, all built from scratch because none could be sourced through any channel. A custom front crash bar fabricated over 60 hours bolted to the chassis legs as if it had always been there. When both halves went back together, 14 titanium bolts held the car front to rear. Matt turned the key, the engine caught and fired, and the exhaust built by Valvetronic gave it a sound no standard Chiron makes. In April 2026, Porsche announced it was selling its entire 45% stake in Bugatti Rimac to a New York consortium led by HOF Capital, with Blue 5 Capital as the largest investor. Porsche's operating profit had collapsed 93% in a single year, dropping from €5.64 billion in 2024 to €410 million in 2025, driven by weakening demand in China and stalling electric vehicle sales. The 28-year relationship between the Volkswagen Group and the world's most exclusive production car brand ended in one transaction, timed almost perfectly alongside a YouTube channel publicly dismantling the mythology the brand had spent those 28 years building. Netflix reportedly saw the story first, and the offer that followed ran into the tens of millions. Not what streaming platforms pay for a car show, but what they pay when a story will reach people who have never searched for a Bugatti in their lives. Amazon entered the conversation and, according to reports, the CEO moved to outbid Netflix entirely. 2 of the world's largest content companies had landed on the same conclusion. This was a story about a working-class man from Leicester who was told no by a corporation worth billions and kept building anyway. That's what makes audiences who have never watched a lap of motorsport sit down and stay. Before the Bugatti, there was a Ferrari 296 GTB, a hybrid supercar pulled from the same Copart salvage route and brought to the same workshop. Ferrari responded exactly as Bugatti had. Official parts got blocked. A dealership refused diagnostics because a crash-damaged car with a race kit fitted couldn't pass the required inspection, and a perfectly constructed Catch-22 made independent repair essentially impossible. 2 of the most exclusive manufacturers in the world, within months of each other, deployed the same strategy against the same man, because filming the inside of these cars and showing exactly what's there makes the mythology those brands depend on significantly harder to maintain. The Chiron runs. The Ferrari is still in the workshop. The streaming deal remains unsigned. Whatever Matt decides, 10 million people will be watching when the next car goes up on the lift.